Oh, ho, you snuck up on me now. Woo! Woo! There we go.
Yay. Right there. Okay, good morning, Timothy. Good morning, everybody watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. This is Japanese Politics One-on-One, episode 242. And we have been here every week since the very beginning with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, the oldest standing government relations and public policy agency here in Tokyo. So, Timothy, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I can see that you are once again somewhere out of Tokyo, and you're
Yes.
going to tell us once again from there what happened in Japanese politics and in Japan during the past week.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Today is the last briefing we're going to have in September, Maya. We have survived yet another month, almost. I mean, let us get through this one. But the new month starts on Thursday. There's Thursday, Friday, and then the election of the LDP president on Saturday. And then we will report to you again on Sunday. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, not just within Japanese politics, but there's a lot going on geopolitically. I'd like to get into all of those. I'm going to talk about what's going on with the yen and what to expect. There has been a kind of an inflection point that we are approaching. As you know, 150 is kind of the trigger point for Japanese policymakers. We're very close to that one. Also, what's going on with the prime minister. He visited the New York and he made a speech at the UN. We talked about that a couple of days or actually last week about what he's going to do, what he's going to attempt to achieve, what he's going to talk about. Also, what's going on in Japanese politics that's really probably the key point here. We have 5 contenders for the LDP president. That election will be in a week. And then the Diet needs to select who the prime minister is going to be. So once the LDP elects their president, then we'll move on to who's going to be the prime minister, because the current prime minister will resign as a consequence of that. There's a lot going on in the economy that is somewhat worrisome. The inflation rate continues to spike, especially with food. I'm going to get into that just a little bit. And then moving on to geopolitically, what's going on that involves Japan, and there's a lot going on there. So let me try and get into that a little bit better to give you a snapshot of what potentially is going to be happening this next week. It's unprecedented what's going on in Japan right now, and I think I appreciate everybody joining and kind of keeping tabs on this. There are a lot of other sources of information, and I appreciate you joining us here. So back to you, Maya.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. I cannot wait to hear the details of all the points you just mentioned. And to everybody watching us on any of the platforms we're on, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, please remember to let us know that you have been there. Hit like. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and leave your thoughts there, your comments, questions if you have any. Because we are also learning from you, and it is important for us to know that you have been there. So, of course, Timothy has mentioned before that there is a synopsis going out a couple of days after this briefing is over during the week. So if you haven't subscribed for the synopsis yet, you can do that on the Langley Esquire's website, or you can also let us know and we'll add your name to the list. And yes, please let us know that you have been there. And Timothy, now it's over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya. We give you the news that's really important and essential for you to plan your future and to help your company achieve the goals that it's set for you, either if you're overseas or if you're here in Japan. So I'm going to tell you like it is. October 31st, the last day of the month, is Halloween. And as you know, if you live in Japan, it's a crazy time here. Shibuya goes crazy. I don't know if the police are going to be pushing that celebration. It's funny, Halloween is not a Japanese traditional holiday, but boy, it goes crazy here. Also, there's a 3-day weekend approaching in 2 weeks. Sports Day falls on a Monday, October 13th. So that will be another 3-day weekend, and you can anticipate me heading for some far off post. I'm actually reporting from the deck of the good ship Grimm's, and I'm working on maintenance here so that when we take off in 2 weeks, we don't have any problems and we can go as far as the wind will take us. So now to the diplomatic posts and what's going on with the market. The yen is dancing towards that very important 150 yen to the dollar magnet. It closed Friday at 149.71. That's 149. That's pretty huge. Typically, the Bank of Japan doesn't take action until it breaches 150, and then it frequently comes into intervention, and it props up the yen. It purchases yen. It tries to tap that down. We don't know what's going to happen, but the yen and the dollar, what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with the U.S. market, how the jobs report comes in, what the economy is doing there. And it really has an impact on the yen here. So as the yen gets higher in number, so 150, 151, 152, exports become much more attractive, but imports become much more expensive. So we're seeing this now because food imports or food prices, especially in Tokyo, Tokyo, I think everybody knows that 10% of the entire population of Japan lives in Tokyo. So Tokyo really guides the rest of what's going on in the nation. And food prices here are reflected kind of in a downstream way, the food prices elsewhere. But it's really kind of, I think, worrisome and getting out of hand for people because the wages are not increasing. And as the yen gets higher, food imports and especially fuel and consumer goods get more expensive. So the feeling of the regular workers is becoming a little bit more dour. And when you conflate that with what's going on this week with 5 members of the LDP running against each other, it really is a recipe for a lot of tension, let's say. So the Bank of Japan is going to sit firm. They're not going to really do anything with the yen or intervention, even probably if it goes past 150, and it could, depending on who the Diet members and the LDP members vote as the prime minister. It could be triggered. I mean, there's a distinct difference between Sanai Takaichi and also Koizumi and a couple of the other contenders. But I think we can say right now the race is becoming very, very narrow. Most of the press reports are only talking about Takaichi and Koizumi, and I think that's a false narrative. I think it will come down to the wire, and I don't think it's well. I'll get into that a little bit later. But moving on with the yen, the impact of imports becoming more expensive is going to reflect on how people feel about the LDP and about the leadership. And that comes to, we have step 1, which is the LDP race, and then we have step 2 is who's going to be prime minister. And what's going on with the yen and also the cost of goods going up is really going to impact who is, first of all, who is going to be the president of the LDP, and then more importantly, who's going to be the president or the prime minister, excuse me. So with regard to Mr. Ishiba, he went to New York. He spent 2 days there. He did run into President Trump in the hallway. They had maybe a 10-minute talk. He spoke with the UN secretary. He talked about the veto power and about Japan asserting a little bit more of a heavy role. When we talked about this last week, one of the concerns was what is he going to say about the 80-year-old war, the end of the Pacific War, that might be divergent from what Mr. Abe said, which was kind of the keynote, kind of the standard policy of Japan with regard to their interpretation or their feelings or their reflection on what happened in World War II. And he didn't diverge too much from that. So there was a lot of tension there. And there was also a lot of curiosity about, this is actually his swan song. He went to New York. He's back now in Tokyo. This was his swan song. He's not going to be meeting too many foreign diplomats as we close this thing out. He's going to be more focused on guiding his cadre of followers, so we don't have factions anymore, but we do have followers. The ASO faction still exists. But I think in terms of voting for who's going to be the LDP president, the factions or the loose affiliation of factions is really going to come into play. Mr. Aso said, 2 weeks ago to his assembly of maybe 50 odd Diet members, you vote with your heart. Everybody can vote their own way, but we know what that actually means. You vote what the boss says to you. Similarly with Mr. Ishiba, he does have a cadre of Diet members and people who believe in him and like him and want him to continue, and they will vote the way that he wants them to go. So currently he's kind of married up to Mr. Koizumi. You might recall that it was Mr. Koizumi who spent 2 hours with him the Saturday before he announced his resignation. He met with Mr. Suga and Mr. Koizumi. Mr. Suga stayed for maybe 35 or 40 minutes and then left. Him and Koizumi together, they went on for another 2 hours. And the next day, the prime minister said he was going to resign, and that started this whole process that we're in now. So it's safe to assume that unlike Mr. Hayashi, who is his cabinet secretary and obviously very close, but Mr. Hayashi is in the Kishida faction. Mr. Koizumi is in the Suga faction, so there's that. And so probably Mr. Ishiba is going to vote Koizumi, and Mr. Koizumi has previously received a lot of attention, a lot of votes, a lot of people who are following him. And in order to run in this race, you have to have 20 supporters, 20 endorsers. And Mr. Koizumi came in very quickly with strong endorsers. He's got Mr. Konotaro, he's got Mr. Kato, a former finance minister, as his backers, as his chief backers, as his policy people in this election. So it's very powerful, but there's a lot going on, and we've had 3 now televised, they're not debates, I don't know what you would call them, kind of showcasing the candidates so that people can see how they look, how they act. And we said here before that in the cameras, people are going to be able to quickly evaluate, although it's not a debate, because the Japanese don't quite do it that way, but they do vote with feelings and with their heart and with the essence, but they can be very fickle too. And so you've been able to see Mr. Motegi, who is just an excellent speaker. He is a smart cookie. And Mr. Hayashi talk about the issues, and also Ms. Takaichi, who is a very clever person. She's kind of on the, she is on the far right of the spectrum here. But people aren't really talking too much about really important policy. It's more like a personality, showing their personality. And in that regard, Mr. Koizumi did not do spectacularly well. He looked a little bit off his feet. He was attacked by Bunshun. So Bunshun comes out every Thursday. I think everybody knows it's a magazine. It's a very popular magazine. It is known as the Prime Minister Killer magazine, but it talks about scandals. It does in-depth interviews, sometimes unsubstantiated, but it gets sued from time to time. But it is a real barometer. People who are interested in what's going on in Japanese politics or culture, society, in the media, really need to follow what's going on with Bunshun. And they just ripped Koizumi. So I think that he's going to have a lot harder of a time paired up against Takaichi as this week falls out. So the last day of campaigning will be on Friday. And then Saturday, the LDP, all of the members in the LDP will gather at the LDP headquarters up on the top floor. They have a huge auditorium there, and this is where the vote will occur. And it's a 2-phase race because there's not just 2 candidates, so it's unlikely that one candidate will pull 50% of the vote. So they pull the first top winners in the first vote, and in the first vote, all 47 prefectures vote en bloc. So depending on how many LDP members are in that prefecture, they will get 1 vote. Prefectures will get 1 vote. And then LDP card-carrying members, they get a vote. And then all of the LDP members who are in the Diet get a vote. And that selects the the first two. That will identify who these first two are. But then when you move into the second phase, only the Diet members and the 47 chapters of the LDP get a vote. So that's 47 versus the number of LDP members who will be voting there, and it's heavily lopsided to the Diet members. So that's where it really comes into play of who's going to, first of all, who's going to be identified in first and second place. Everybody thinks it's right now going to be Koizumi and Takaichi. It's too early to say, but it just looks like it's going to be more of a race than you might think. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it is highly likely that President Trump will visit China. He said just a couple of days ago, September or October, I think I'm leaning on that. A trade deal between the United States and China is huge, potentially huge. And I think if he goes to China, there will be a trade deal. Tensions will come down. He'll probably visit Japan on the way to China. We don't have substantiation or confirmation on that, but it is highly likely that he'll do that. So when you're a member of the Japanese public, or you're actually voting for who's going to be one of these individuals who will potentially be prime minister, and you think of President Trump visiting Japan, there'll be a new prime minister probably by then. It takes a little bit of time to organize a presidential trip to China, but it could happen very quickly. It could happen within 10 days, actually. The president moves very quickly and moves on very quick intuition. And it's possible that he could come, before the Diet makes its decision on who's going to be the prime minister. More likely, it will be right around the time that you have a new prime minister that's elected. And when President Trump comes in, he will be, obviously it'll be maybe a 1 day or 2 day visit, but he will sit with the prime minister. And when people picture that in their mind, President Trump sitting with Mr. Koizumi, their hair catches on fire. They that's not going to work. That puts Japan in such a weak position. Mr. Trump against Mr. Koizumi. With Sanai Takaichi, maybe it's a little bit better, but who else would be there? I think at this point in time, you can discount Mr. Kobayashi and Mr. Motegi being either first or second place. But I think there's a great argument for saying that Mr. Hayashi will beat out Mr. Koizumi, and it'll be a Koizumi Takaichi race. And ultimately, should the president announce that he will be visiting China, I think that will really sway that vote. So it's something to quickly look at and evaluate as we go forward. So I'll keep on top of that and report to you this time next week. But it's a news item that you will be hearing about as the week opens up. So moving forward with the diplomatic schedule of the prime minister, the expo is winding down. There's less than a month left. They're hitting about 20,000 visitors a day now, because everybody else is kind of geared towards knowing that this 6-month process is at its end. Not so many country leaders are coming, or huge delegations are coming, and that was the big diplomatic push that the prime minister had. While everything else was going on, he also had to host all of these members. There was the TCAD, all of the African nations were here. He had to say hello to all of them. And there are also other delegations that are coming in at the time that their pavilion is having their day. So he has been extremely busy. He's obligated to meet them, sometimes have dinner and lunch, or maybe a summit with them, at a time when all of this other stuff is going on. I mean, much of this was before he decided that he was going to announce that he was going to resign, and he was full of vim and vinegar, and he was going to lead the country. But even after that, I mean, you can't stop that tanker moving so quickly. So the people are lined up, coming to Japan to participate in their country's pavilion exposition, but also to talk with the prime minister. Um, let me see, what else do we have there? There are still state visits that are coming in, but I think as we wind down here the race, and then Mr. Ishiba will offer his resignation, then we move into the next phase. Let me see, what else do we have here? I'm sorry, Maya, was I supposed to turn you over? I heard you clicking in the background.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have to mute myself. Forgive me for that.
Okay, I heard you beating your cat again. Okay, so moving on. I think people who are watching Japanese politics are a little bit disappointed with the kind of tone and the tenor of the performance of these five members. They don't talk. They don't wag fingers at each other. They don't criticize their policy. They don't criticize very much. Everybody wants to be agreeable. Everybody wants to be likable. So it really is kind of a disservice to the voting public, although it's not the whole voting public. Everybody is going to suffer or benefit by who's going to be the prime minister, but it's basically an internal LDP race. But it really is not a whole lot of substance. There have been a couple of things that have come up about, for example, what's the policy on the economy or on foreigners. So there is a theme that's going through that seems to resonate among all of the candidates, and that's about how we deal with the influx of foreigners. And it's kind of a backhanded reference to the progress that San Seito made in the last election, where they really started to enunciate a position on foreigners and how many foreigners are coming in and the kind of impact it's having on Japanese society in a negative context. And that seemed to have a resonance within the voting public. So I think that these candidates are picking up on that. I don't know how long that is going to continue, but it does seem to make for news. So all of them are saying, one thing or another about that, but they're also talking about the economy, about taxes, about gift giveaways, about giving people money. It's this last week is really important to watch, but I think the end run is going to be the last phase, which is who's in first place and who's in second place, and then the voting there. And that's when this battle between Mr. Aso and Mr. Kishida really comes to the forefront, because these two are really the ones that are defining Japanese politics. They have block votes, so there are other people that don't belong to the Aso faction or to Mr. Kishida's faction. There's a huge contingent of former Abe faction members. I mean, they were huge. They were twice as large as the next largest, which was the Aso faction. So they're kind of in a Ronin status. They still gather together, but it's loosely defined. But the vote is not going to be completely dictated by Mr. Ishiba, certainly, or by Mr. Aso, less certainly, or by Mr. Kishida. So who can cajole other people to join in their selection, their preference, will really come out. And the key here is that they have the election among the five, and then there's a break. So they select the first and the second contenders, and then there's a break of maybe an hour, and then the next vote comes up of who's going to be first place, and then that person will be the president of the LDP. It all happens very quickly, all happens on Saturday, all at the same venue. And so that horse trading, if you would call it that, has a very narrow window to happen in. So I think people know beforehand, like us talking about it here, we know who the first and second contenders are going to be with a high degree of confidence. We're going to know that even more on Friday. And I think the powers that be, like Mr. Kishida's faction, Mr. Aso's faction, loosely stated, they're going to be gathering their forces and bringing other people in. It will be a real race, and you'll see that. And who turns out to be victorious will largely guide who's going to be in the cabinet. So I think one of the issues with Mr. Koizumi, although he's young and relatively inexperienced, the idea was that he would delegate and he would rely on his cadre of people that are surrounding him. And I thought that that was one of the strong points that he has. But he hasn't performed very well, so I think it's very difficult to predict that. Let me see. I'm getting a low battery on my phone, Maya. So we'll see how that kind of pans out over the week, and I'll keep you informed on that. The other thing that I'd like to close with so that we can get into the Q&A is what's going on geopolitically. There's stuff going on in Gaza with Israel. There was an attack on Qatar. Israel attacked a Hamas meeting and killed several of the people that were attending there. But it was an attack on a Middle Eastern nation independent of, the United States and Israel. So it's a very difficult thing that's happening right now. Egypt is on the warpath, figuratively speaking, with what's going on there and complaining loudly at the UN. You've got things that are going on with Turkey, with Iran, with the Ukraine, and with Russia in breaching airspaces, and also in Venezuela too. There's been kinetic action there authorized by the President of the United States. That seems to be on a very high ramp that's going to be going forward, and it's very worrisome. So it's something to look out for. It's going to impact Japan because Japan, although it's been quiet diplomatically on the world stage, once there is a new prime minister, Japan needs to come up very quickly because it does play a role. And its absence has been noted. So that really also impacts on who's going to be the next prime minister. So when you think of that, and you think of the top three contenders, Takaichi, Koizumi, and Mr. Hayashi, other people are going to be thinking the same way and coming to the same sort of conclusions. We've also got military maneuvers that are joint maneuvers between China and Russia going on right now. North Korea has launched another test for an ICBM, and now, we've known this before, that the United States is within range of North Korea's ICBMs, and if it's loaded with a nuclear device, then that could be a big deal. And it also remains to be seen what the President of the United States will do with North Korea if he comes to China, and what that is going to, what conversation that's going to include. I doubt he would visit North Korea, but you never know. He's really something to watch, and there's just so much else going on. So we will keep an eye on it, but it does look like there's a lot of people suggesting that we're already in World War III. We're just in an early phase of World War III. It is unstoppable. It is inevitable. It seems like that is going forward, and I think the Prime Minister is worried about that. But he's only here for another 2 weeks, perhaps. But the President of the United States is hell-bent on asserting American prominence, and there's much more that will be going on over this next week that could have a big impact on who is selected ultimately as the president of the LDP. And later, he will more likely than not be the prime minister. It's a little bit early to get into that because that's a whole new can of worms. But I will be talking about that in our next briefing 243 next Sunday. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up and turn it back over to you, Maya, for our Q&A session. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending and paying attention.
And thank you to you, Timothy, for the briefing. So yes, you talked about the candidates and you talked about other events. Of course, again, I'm sure that we're going to get even more questions today, but I'll start once again with the questions that come from the very first person commenting.
Okay.
every morning. So, Byron, thank you for doing that. And Byron is in the United States. So, saying that he's an early bird is probably not an accurate description of. Right, of what he's doing. But anyway, please allow me to start with his questions because they came probably 2 hours before we started the briefing. So the
All right.
first one, this appears to be yet another LDP presidential election where fundamental issues, existential issues affecting Japan are not even mentioned,
That's
let
right.
alone, let alone debated. Further statements are being made in the innocence of demographic data showing persistent decline of the Japanese population. Could you please comment on this?
That's a mouthful. So you could imagine, the United States is watching very carefully. The U.S. Embassy is the largest embassy presence in Japan. It is far greater than the British, the Australians. It probably exceeds both of those together. So they know what's going on here. You can imagine that should a weak choice be made for prime minister, it's possible that Trump would just bypass Japan because he's watching the debates too. He knows they have good information on who the candidates are and what it means to Japan should any of them win. But yes, it's really disheartening. Not disheartening. I mean, it is Japanese politics. It is Japan. It's their culture. It's how they argue. It's how they kind of distinguish themselves to the voting population. So you can comment on it, but you really can't criticize it that much because that's the way things are done here, and they don't want to offend anybody. Just make sure everybody likes you. It's just like working in a corporation. If you feel strongly about a certain issue, you really don't confront people point blank on that. You do it kind of in the back office or through other means. But we see Japanese culture explained fully in this kind of a situation. I mean, Japanese politics is only a reflection on what's going on in Japanese culture and built on history and tradition. So it's I sense what you're saying there, Byron, and I also feel that I wish there was more heat and light, but it's an election of the LDP president. It becomes a little bit more difficult when it's a selection of the prime minister. So whoever is selected as the LDP president is going to be in the hot seat. He needs to be on top of his game, and I think there's only one person that can really bear the brunt of that. And let's see how it pans out.
Yes, and I also think that some people, and of course foreign residents, long-term foreign residents who have been here for a while, they probably remember that Mr. Koizumi's father, right, he actually ran on the slogan of Beautiful Japan.
Yes.
So, right, and talking about Beautiful Japan, I remember that I was rather new to
Laughing.
Japan. Yes, I couldn't believe how you could run on a slogan like that when there were so many other issues that needed to be
Yeah.
talked about and discussed. But of course, once again, you do not touch upon, let's say, ticklish issues when you run, in presidential elections or anything special or important here.
Well,
Okay, so
like we said, the Japanese population can be very fickle when it comes to politics. On the one hand, if you've got the factions, you're kind of honor bound to vote with what the leader says. But that's not what we have now. We have every man for himself. You can vote with your convictions. But it's been asked here before, do you see the return of factions in Japanese politics? And yes, I do, because they serve a valuable function. So let's see how this pans out. It could be that, the LDP makes a mistake again. I think in reflection, the selection of Mr. Ishiba was a mistake. And who's going to be the next one? And is he going to call a snap election as soon as he becomes prime minister, in spite of his promises not to? All five of the candidates said, no, it's a snap election after becoming prime minister. It's just not in the cards. You just never know. If the way you tell that a politician is lying is they're moving their lips. So
Well, but also, once again, since you mentioned Japanese culture, in Japanese culture, everything is very situational.
Yeah,
So what they say at the moment, at this point of time, they probably don't see the necessity to call a snap election.
right,
But once the situation changes and they are in entirely new waters, they might change their mind as well.
right.
So right. So then the second question here is, Ishin has declared that it is ready to talk with the next president of the LDP on joining the coalition. So, not revealing their preference for who is to be the next
Sure.
LDP head, while giving assurance that there will be no general election following the LDP presidential election. Right, you just touched upon this. So, your thoughts on this anyway,
Is this
Timothy?
from Brill Cream?
Yes, and of
Okay.
course, he mentioned that. Timothy, are you getting jittery about the bro cream?
So Ishin is going to absolutely say that. They're going to say, yeah, we're open to talk to, Mr. Koizumi. We've been talking to Koizumi. We had a good picture with him actually. But if it happens to be somebody else, we're game. But whoever is going to be the new LDP president, they need to join forces with one of the two. There are three opposition parties. The Constitutional Democratic Party will not join in a coalition with the LDP. We already know that. So the tie is with Ishin or the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's faction or his political party. Mr. Tamaki might say, look, I'll do it, but I want to be prime minister. Ishin can't say that because their leader is governor of Osaka. So he can't say, I'll join you, but I want to be prime. And probably it's an even deal. The LDP will stay in power, but the president will be the leader of one of the two factions. It's not going to be Ishin. Ishin just doesn't have that kind of pull. It could be the Democratic Party for the People, but I think Ishin is a little bit more hungry, a little bit more malleable. They understand what they can get from the LDP, making Osaka the second city by definition. Should there be some sort of a catastrophe or disaster in Tokyo, it wouldn't be going to the nearby city that was created for that. What's the name of the city, Maya?
Excuse me.
It slipped
Work
my
on
mind
it.
now. Yes, I'm working on it. The city that's just an hour away by train.
From where? From Tokyo,
From
you mean?
Tokyo, yeah. With
Nagoya?
the wide boulevards.
I didn't
Okay.
follow. Yes, forgive me for that.
Our friend who is an artist lives there.
Atami?
Yeah.
No, no wide boulevards there.
No wide
Hamamatsu?
boulevards there.
Oh,
Um,
Hamamatsu? No?
sorry,
No.
ladies and gentlemen, I'm just
Okay,
blowing
it
on
will
that.
come. It will
Anyway,
come.
anyway,
Yes.
it's an hour away. It was built to accommodate Tokyo should something happen to
Oh,
Tokyo.
Tsukuba. Excuse me.
It's
You
Tsukuba.
mean
Yes,
Tsukuba?
Tsukuba.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So it's not going to be Tsukuba. It's going to be Osaka. Okay, let's make a promise on that. That would be a great thing for Osaka. It's just one more rung up. It also makes Ishin a little bit more of an attractive option to go nationally. They've been trying that. They haven't been very successful at that. So I think they would be a much more attractive coalition partner than Mr. Tamaki's, but you just never know. But the LDP is in a pickle. It needs to have that if it's going to push legislation through. For everybody that lives in Tsukuba, please forgive me for that gap there.
Right. Okay. Forgive me too, because yes, it didn't come up immediately as well. Yes. Yeah. All right. And then following up on the questions of Byron, and also what you said about well, the possible candidates and Ishin, of course. So, do you see any possibility for the coalition to once again unite against the LDP?
Yeah.
One, yeah.
Okay, so that's another possibility where the Constitutional Democratic Party pulls everybody in, the communists, the socialists, the small parties, everybody, because in fact, numerically, they could do that. The LDP doesn't have a majority in either house. So if the Constitutional Democratic Party was successful in pulling everybody in, then they take over. And if you're an opposition party, even like the Communist Party, being a part of the ruling government, it's an attractive option. You're willing to sacrifice quite a bit to do that. So I know that Mr. Noda is working hard to achieve that goal. I just don't know if it's feasible. I think the LDP sacrificing and bringing in one of the other opposition parties, Ishin or the Democratic Party for the People, is more likely. It's logistically an easier stretch. I don't think as brilliant as Mr. Noda is, I just, the differences are too wide, but it is a possibility, yes.
All right, thank you for that. And we've got a question also from Manabe-san.
Okay.
It's about the Bank of Japan and the, I think these are, yes, exchange traded funds. So his question is, what do you think about selling ETF, exchange traded funds, by the Bank of Japan?
Okay, so there's a lot of controversy going on there. These are huge. This is a huge pile of funds that the Bank of Japan has decided to release into the economy over a 10-year span. The Nikkei had its best day in history 10 days ago, and then the Bank of Japan released this news that it was going to be unloading the ETFs, and then it took a nosedive. So it did have an impact. Since the last week, it has recovered from that, and people are being a little bit more balanced about the impact that that's going to have and the impact it's going to have on the economy. So I think that there's been a bad reaction initially, and then a little bit more cooler heads are evaluating it. And so I don't think that is going to play very hard on the economy. But the economy is in such a delicate situation now. The Bank of Japan is reluctant to even move on the interest rates until after the LDP goes through their process and the prime minister is selected, and then they'll probably go forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, I think that in the beginning of today's briefing, you also mentioned Mr. Ishiba's preparation for the speech of on the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War.
Right.
And also that there are some concerns within the LDP members as well, because of course Ms. Takaichi, she is also concerned about what Mr. Ishiba is going to say. So, well, could you please give us a little bit more about that?
So the fears that people like Ms. Takaichi had about him, because Takaichi is a accolade of Mr. Abe, and Mr. Abe's speech is held up as kind of the key message that Japan wants to stand behind with regard to its reflection on what happened in World War II. And don't mess it up. Don't kind of add to it, Mr. Ishiba. And I think he was, although there was a lot of fear that he might overstep that to kind of imprint his own image on it, it wasn't overstepping in such a way that it's going to cause massive concern.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, if yes, it seems that we have gone through all the questions today, so the comment section feels a little bit quiet. But yes, thank you very much for this, and to everybody who stayed with us today. Very much we appreciate your time spent with us, and we appreciate your thoughts and comments and questions shared with us. So we'll be here once again on Sunday next week.
Next week.
Yes, Sunday next week. Timothy, I'm curious where you will be reporting from at that point of time, but I guess that we'll need to wait for a week and see at that on that day. Okay.
So in 2 weeks' time is a 3-day weekend, and preparing so that there's no malfunctions, there's no snafu, everything works the way it should work. sailing is about maintenance mostly. So for every hour that you sail, you probably spend like 3 hours in maintenance. And this vessel is 51 years old. So it does require a lot of upkeep and maintenance. And so last week I traveled to Misaki. This week it's maintenance. Next week will also be maintenance, so that when I leave for the 3-day weekend, it's problem free. So I will probably be reporting from this exact location as well, and have lots of chores in front of me.
Okay, yes. So do not overwork yourself, but of course also stay on board,
Right.
because yes, yeah, it helps to be there, right?
It
Okay.
does.
So once again, thank you very much, Timothy, and to
Thanks, everybody.
everybody,
Thanks, Maya.
yes, who stayed with us or watched us. Let us know that you have been here. Please hit like or subscribe if you haven't done that yet. And of course, I hope that you're looking forward to the synopsis that is coming up in a couple of days too. Okay, that's all. Have a nice day, and we'll see you next time.